Go. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by another live episode of Real Estate Titans, sponsored by Lion Bolt Media. I'm your host, Greg Fowler, traveling throughout the marketplace, interviewing the top real estate professionals in our field, essentially gathering insight, inspiration, really drives and motivates these top producers above and beyond everybody else in what I'd like to consider a real estate titan. Now, our very special guest and featured titan for episode 284, all the way from South Lake, Texas, none other than Dani Hampton. Dani, it's an honor and pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you for having me.
This is so exciting, and I can't wait to dive in really to the series of questions, Dani, for the audience and everybody out there into the Titan Nation to really get to know you as a person, a professional, and everything along the way that you've learned to help grow and scale to the highest of levels. So without further ado, let's just dive in, starting with the first question, which is really the origin story. So Dani, if anybody doesn't know who you are, if they're living under a rock, whatever the case may be, where did you come from? What got you into the biz? You know, what's your life and progression up until today? What's that origin story for you look like?
Okay, so I guess if someone's living under a rock, they don't have social media, or they must not be one of my 5,000 Facebook friends. Because if you don't know that you can only have 5,000 Facebook friends. So I literally had to delete somebody yesterday to be friends with Greg Fowler yesterday.
Most appreciated, Dani. It means the world for sure. And I feel your pain with the 5,000, no doubt.
Who I am. So I've grown up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas pretty much my entire life.
Wow.
And I got into real estate when I was 22 years old.
Unreal.
So yeah, which it does feel like I am way too young to say I've been a real estate agent for 11 years, but here I am.
Wow.
And I did know when I got, let's say, just into the working world after high school, y'all, I didn't like high school so much. I got a GED. I basically despised structure in all ways that I wanted to find the way to get out of it quicker. What's the easy button? And I think that's followed me in my entire professional career and life is if there is an easy button, Dani will try to find it. And if there is structure, Dani will also try to find her way around it.
Wow.
So I got into real estate when I was 22 years old, and what influenced me was I actually bought my first house when I was 19 years old.
Unreal.
And I'm a little guilty that they were literally just giving away money in 2009 to anyone who would go buy a house. And when I heard you'll give me money to go buy a house and you'll approve me when I made $9 an hour,
Wow.
well, we went and bought a house.
Unreal.
I did actually, it was not just me, it was my husband and I. I got married at 18 because I was lucky enough to find my husband very young in life. And would we give that advice to our kids? I don't know.
Okay.
But I hope that we can continue to show them the success story of it. Well, the first house we bought it directly from a builder, and we did not have any real estate professionals in our world. We just bought it from the builder sales rep. I didn't even really know what a realtor was. So it wasn't until I was selling that house. So when we decided to sell that house, I was 21 years old, and we quickly realized that we bought the wrong house in the wrong neighborhood.
Oh, no.
Yep. And so I kind of got influenced in that moment through my own experience that I was like, there needs to be a professional here that helps guide these decisions.
Wow.
And when we went to go buy our second house, and we did the same thing, we went and bought it through a builder because we clearly don't know how to learn our lessons.
Oh, no.
We did at least get introduced to a real estate agent. That sales rep did introduce us to a real estate agent, and that real estate agent planted the seed when he was helping me sell our first home. He said, if you ever decide to get in real estate, let me know. And I don't think he knew who he was saying that to, because when he said that, I called him 6 months later and I said, I have my license now. Now what?
Whoa. Okay, literally opening the door into your mind. I mean, well, initially, at 19, looking down the road to saying, hey, let's jump into this, you and your husband, purchasing that first property, experiencing what you experienced, and then going down the road again and meeting somebody who was in the profession to throw that. Now, prior to that, did you feel any type of way about the industry? I mean, obviously your experience at 19 and when you went to kind of sell the property, wrong, kind of area, that sort of thing. But was it really that individual, that gentleman who sparked the initial thought, or was it earlier on than that?
I think it was a kind of a domino effect.
Okay.
So I will share. So I was a leasing agent at an apartment complex.
Okay, cool.
And so I had a little bit of an affiliation with being in the real estate world, with putting a roof over people's heads, having to be someone who builds rapport, who knows a sales process. And so when I started tying a lot of that together, I started to even observe my own experience of going through these processes.
Wow.
And the second home we were building, so we were building it from the ground up.
Okay.
I got to build a relationship just with everyone involved through that sales process. And I started to be like, would I want their job? So, because I was already starting to kind of piece together those things where, as we're in our early 20s and we're kind of planning our life out, my husband was finishing college. And I knew there was no way I was going to college.
Yeah.
That I was like, what can I do that's going to help me make money? Because I always knew I would be someone that would want to have some type of income, whether I would be the breadwinner. I don't know if that was my idea.
Sure.
But I just knew I always wanted to have an income. And so, how I'll kind of recap this, I realized that I didn't want to work for a builder and I tell this to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I did not want to work for a builder because I was going to put myself in the same position that I was in when I was working for an apartment complex, because I could only sell that specific product. And a lot of the times I would connect with people. So I was great with connecting with people. I already learned that skill set. Wow. And I was like, oh, but if you don't like my product, like I kind of have nothing I can do about it.
Sure.
So when I was thinking about the builder position, I was realizing I would be doing the same thing. So as a real estate agent, I was like, oh, you mean here I am having to sell myself as a professional to service you, to help you find that home. I was like, well, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And the second once I got my license and obviously had to go down the road of picking a brokerage and choosing where I was going to work, I realized at that point, I was like, okay, I need to make sure I'm around the right people. And I tend to want to be an overachiever. Okay. And so I was like, okay, let me put myself with another overachiever. Well, the gentleman who had sold our home, who planted that seed, he was just building his real estate team at that time. Okay. And of course, I was 22 years old. I'm sure he might have been looking at me like I was a 22-year-old, like, okay. I called him and he made me even interview with other brokers. And I called him up and I said, I don't care how I get on your team. Wow. I want to be in your ecosystem. Yeah. And so I found my way. And he said, if you're a showing assistant, like I wasn't even getting title of realtor at that point. Yeah. But hey, you come in as a showing assistant, learn some things behind the scenes, build your way up. I was like, that's fine. I'm 22. I'm young. I can learn.
Yeah. But having that thought process though, Dani, and I appreciate you sharing kind of where your mind was at throughout those decision makings, because there's a lot of individuals that tune in to the show as well that are getting into the business, or they're newer, or they're now being reminded, oh yeah, I remember 20 years ago when I was in that position. So it's a really great storyline to kind of go down the road. I want to take you back even past that, I guess, before, as you mentioning kind of in high school, there's so many entrepreneurs that are top tier professionals in their field, absolutely dominating it. And we're not just talking about transaction base or volume or, GCI for monies related, but they're just really living a life that they've built by design. And higher education has nothing to do with that, right? It's the stick-to-itiveness and work ethic that's there. And identifying what's right for you and for your path and your journey is different for everybody. So it is really phenomenal to hear that, you decided early on, like that just wasn't your thing. Like school just wasn't there. You're looking for efficiency. So you mentioned easy button. And I think the idea is, why work harder when you can work smarter? And at such a young age to be able to identify that's huge. And I'm anticipating that a lot of that is carried on throughout your life and your career. As you mentioned, 11 years into the biz flying by. So what was it like at that point? You're in the biz now, right? You're newly licensed. You're kind of in that, let's just call it like mentor mentee sort of scenario into that. Where does your business and your career path go from there?
Yes. So I'll make one little note. My
Oh,
husband told me that when I got into real estate, because he was like, hold on, this is 100% commission. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, well, our bills don't really match having someone on 100% commission.
well.
And I was like, okay, what? But I feel like I can do this. Like, and I went to a few sales meetings and stuff. And of course, you hear this everywhere in real estate. You can make hundreds of thousands of dollars. So of course, I'm feeding that to him, going, babe, I can make hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And so he's like, all right, I'll give you 3 months.
Wow. Okay. All right.
and and it really just kind of took it from there. It did take me 3 months to get my first paycheck.
Wow.
First paycheck was $1,200. I was so
Yeah,
excited.
sure.
And but it only took me from there. 2 months later, I had 7 houses under contract.
Whoa.
And so I started to realize that a lot of those skills that I brought from other jobs that I've had, and again, lots of it to be people skills. Like I might be still learning the real estate world. I might still be learning, the ins and outs of home inspections and closing documents and all of that. But at the end of the day, I think the foundation of it was just those general people and sales skills that I think really catapulted me in my role. And learning how to be a real estate agent, obviously to me is like obviously making sure you're in the right organization, making sure you're being led by the right people, making sure that you align with their mission, their vision, all that. Super important. And I think that kind of took me on my journey. So the first 5 years of real estate for me, I worked on 2 real estate teams.
Okay.
And a few of those changes just came with life changes because I was becoming a mom.
Wow.
I just had to change locations primarily just because I was like, well, I can't put myself, if anybody knows Dallas Fort Worth, we drive an hour to everything.
Love that.
Um, we don't have to drive an hour to everything, but we can.
Sure.
And so I just made a lot of changes specifically for locations. And then also just not knowing exactly what my vision of my career was at that point, having to understand that as a mother and how much I was going to be able to dedicate myself to my business.
Wow.
But while I was in that first few years, obviously learning real estate, how to get leads. At that point, I was getting sign calls. I think we were starting to dabble. This is where I start to feel like an old realtor.
Oh, nice.
I feel like this is when we were like dabbling into the online leads, right? Like we didn't necessarily have like online leads, like people are buying online leads, now.
Yep.
So so a lot of things kind of trickled into those next few years where I was just learning how to do that. But there was one thing I felt very good at, and that was social media.
Wow.
And so I knew, starting in real estate at a young age, I did not have a lot of friends who were going to afford to buy a house.
Right.
Or feel like they're in the position in life, right? Like they might not be married, they might still be figuring out where they want to live. So my sphere of influence really was slim pickings at that point.
Yeah.
So social media was a place for me to truly work on building that sphere of influence and truly connect with people that I meet from networking, I meet from past jobs, from my apartment complex that I worked at.
Mm,
And so that really just got me to the point where I went from closing 20 houses to 40 houses a year
mm.
in my first 4 years of real estate.
Wow.
So I would tell you the turning point for me
Uh-huh.
was the last year I was on someone else's real estate team.
Okay.
I learned that a majority of my business, about 90% of my business, was from me self generating.
Ooh. Wow.
And again, that's not necessarily a problem for everybody who is on a real estate team,
Right.
but every relationship needs to be some kind of give and take, and there needs to be some kind of win-win.
Sure.
So I think it was starting to be at that point where I felt like I was putting in a lot of work to generate my own business, but I wasn't getting I wasn't seeing the value anymore from the team that I was on.
Mhm.
And I think it just, I started to, at that point, I didn't know what I was looking for professionally in my business and where I was going. But as I started to learn what I was good at and what I liked doing, I was like, okay, I think something needs to change. So I went and we made a bold move. My daughter, my oldest daughter at that point was probably just under 2 years old.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I sold 40 houses with her being this young.
Mhm.
I'm going to go try to do this on my own. And I went off as a solo agent
Mm.
year five, and I sold 52 homes with me and a transaction coordinator. Because
Okay.
like we talked about, I look for that easy button. You're
Mhm.
telling me I can pay someone per file that I never have to I dot T cross and do compliance?
Yeah. Bingo.
Done.
Oh, I love that though. And as you're mentioning it, this is such a great journey and timeline. Being a part of the two teams and really soaking up what the teams or organizations were bringing to the table and identifying as I think we should all be evolving as entrepreneurs. There is a time and a place where is it still a two-way street? Is it reciprocal into the environment that we're in? If the answer is no, you're not doing yourself or anybody involved any favors. So I think that there's a lot of individuals that go through that timeline into their career path, and that's okay. You should be really evaluating what's making sense, and that's for everybody involved in the equation. Taking the leap of faith, though, Dani, that's that's something that takes very bold, behavior, tenacity into that note to say, hey, now's the time for me to do that. So at that time, even though you were saying, hey, I generating 90% of that, business that's coming in, can you put yourself back into your shoes there, kind of like you said, year five, what you were feeling at that time? I mean, what was your mind going through when you decided, all right, I'm out of this team. This is second team. I'm doing my own thing. Is there anything that floods into your mind that just off the cuff here?
I think it was, I mean, I think really understanding your vision of your life and where you want to be and who you want to be. And I think at that time, what we were personally experiencing was really just my relationship. So my husband at that point had gotten out of college, has gone through the first few jobs, right? Just the first few jobs of figuring out where he wants to be in business and all of that.
Mhm.
And the crazy part was, comparing his job, which obviously seems a little unfair, but comparing his job to mine and being like, if I work harder, I make more money.
Mhm.
If you work harder,
That
not much happens.
no.
Ooh, 1% pay raise.
Right. If you're
and
lucky, yeah.
and so we had kind of gone through a few shifts in his roles and his companies, and unfortunately, even just experiencing just the normal workforce market and layoffs and things like that, to where we started to really value my job as an entrepreneur and as a self-employed person,
Yeah.
to be like, hey, if we pour more into this cup,
Mhm.
I think we actually will get more out of it. And so I think at that point, I mean, I would hope after 5 years that I had my husband's buy-in, but I think that
I would guess so, can't speak
I
for
think I think when he started seeing me doing those things like the vision boards
him.
and going, okay, if I sell this many houses, I'll make 6 figures.
Mhm.
And just even seeing me go from someone who I think my first year I made 60, and then the second year I started making over 6 figures. And I don't care if I walked into Lexus dealership at 8 months pregnant buying the smallest sports car, but I did. And it was on my vision board.
It's so good.
So I think at that point having that having someone else who believed in you to be like, you know what, yes, I see what we're doing, and I
Yeah.
see if we pour more into this cup and we put ourselves in a position, we could truly change the trajectory of our life.
Mhm.
And I think we started, I think especially at that point, because I was the age of 27, 20, yeah, I was about 26, 27 years old.
Okay.
I was really starting to be able to picture, especially us establishing ourselves as a family.
Mhm.
Um, we're like, okay, we like making money,
Mhm.
and I think we want to make more of it. And I think if I make this move, and I really like branding, there's a lot of marketing things I like to do. But if you're on someone else's team, obviously, you kind of have to follow their rules.
Right.
And so I was like, I kind of really want to test this. And that's kind of what went into that leap of faith, is going, okay, you know what? I have a lot of ideas. I didn't realize how much of an idea machine I am.
Wow.
If I'm able to put this into work, and I'm the guinea pig, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
all on me. If I can make this kind of money on a team, how much money can I make if I go and build my own brand?
Mm.
And that was number one. That was the first thing on my to do list. The second I knew I was going off on my own, I was like, I am building a real estate brand.
Mm.
And I want to be able to put my logo on someone's t shirt and they would know who it is.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that is definitely the birth of me as an agent turning into a brand. Maybe a little unfamiliar with thinking that I was actually going to be building a real estate team at that point, but I just wanted to see how many houses I could sell with just me and a transaction coordinator.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it was messy. I don't feel like I had a personal life, but I did sell 52.
You know what though, Danny, and the reality of that situation is that, this isn't a perfect polished sort of scenario, and the authenticity that you're bringing and the truth that you're sharing is the way for people to hear. I mean, the fact that you're going from team 40 transactions, if I'm correct, to
Mhm.
individual with TC 52, with your daughter being two, seeing that kind of progression into it, there's something there, and it's a very serious thing. And the fact of the matter is that life is messy, and I think the idea and the analogy that I always look at is kind of a duck kind of grazing across the pond, and their feet are flapping like crazy underneath, but they're just smooth sailing from up top. So or the iceberg analogy, however you want to break it down. And I think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that resonate with that and understand that. That's just the truth of the situation, but there's ways to adjust and evolve and to bring people on board. So I definitely want to get where your thoughts are, then moving from that leap of faith to where you are to today, because making massive waves, doing huge things with the team. So I just kind of want to get your progression and perspective into that from that point.
Oh yeah, I know. I got 11 years for you. So what can we all put in a short time?
I love it.
Um, so I feel like what happened after that first year is that I realized that I couldn't truly create more time, right? So essentially having the transaction coordinator, I already felt leveraged,
Mhm.
and I already felt like I was starting to understand slowly how to work with someone and building expectations and building a process. But I'll be 100% honest with you. Everything I did in the first couple of years of me building my brand and building my team was very messy.
Yeah.
It could have been less messy, but as I told you guys in the very beginning, I didn't like structure.
Mhm.
And if I thought I could find an easy button, I would look for it.
Right.
And so I do have people skills. And
Mhm.
so I feel like it was easy for me to always bring get someone's buy-in on joining me in business.
Okay.
But to say I had clear expectations or clear processes, that's always been a challenge of mine since
Wow.
the
Yeah.
very beginning.
Sure.
And if we have obviously a lot of people who are listening to this, hopefully you guys are reading books. If you haven't started reading, please start reading. I'm reading books now that I'm like, holy smokes, where was I and where was this book 5 years ago? Because I could have saved myself so much heartache if I would have read this book then.
Wow.
But if anyone's heard it's the who, not how, right?
Yeah.
I was constantly trying to figure out how to do something,
Mm.
but I couldn't figure out how to do more time.
Yeah.
So the next best thing that I knew I needed to bring on another agent, someone else who had a license, who I knew my clients would feel comfortable with because I was not having any issues generating leads.
Right.
I was doing it all through social media and just showing everyone what I do every day as a mom and as a realtor.
Mm.
And I brought on another mom,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the birth of DHG.
Wow.
So I went from being Dani Hampton Group just because I always knew I would have an admin.
Mm-hmm.
And Dani Hampton team doesn't sound good, by the way. So that's why it became group.
I like the group.
Um,
I like yes, for sure.
and I didn't want to be the Hamptons because I thought that would make me a hotel.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so just Dani always had to be in the name.
Yeah.
We turned ourselves into DHG, and I brought on everybody would assume is my first buyer's agent.
Okay. Okay.
And really the progression from there is that I think it's a lot of shooting from the hip, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the trial and error process, sometimes it works. I definitely have a lot more faith than others when people, I'm okay with taking giant risks.
Right.
But I'm learning now, 6 years later,
Mhm.
I wish I would have put more into planning because I definitely caused myself a lot of heartache
Mhm.
with just understanding my standards, my who my client was, what client experience am I looking for, and I think sometimes you have to go through some life lessons, right?
Yeah.
To really understand this is why we do what we do.
Mhm.
And it took me going from selling 50 houses by myself
Mhm.
to 147 houses
Wow.
in 2020.
Mhm.
After that point, I've had my second child.
Wow.
I actually had my husband quit corporate America,
All right.
and he joined me in business. I told that man, I said, I was like, okay, you think you check my emails now? I'm going to get you one day.
Good.
I was like, if I can hopefully show you that if you help me bring the structure, right? The who, not how.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, my husband's the who. He is organized. He does have structure. He does think outside the box. So
Wow.
he brings IT into the world, which was
Mhm.
awesome because that's where our world is.
Yeah.
So the second I brought him onto the team, which was in 2019,
Okay.
I mean, you tell me, how do we go from selling? I think at that point I was at 70 houses a year to
Okay.
147 houses a year.
There you go.
Systems, processes, all of the planning got put in place.
Mm. But you stated something that's so beautiful is the who, right? So there's so many roadblocks or self-inflicted roadblocks that we put or restrictions that we have on ourselves, but it's really our specialties based off of individuals who really love, eat, sleep, and breathe those tasks to do it, one, more efficient than we could, but they're going to enjoy it at the same time. So playing to the strengths and surrounding yourself with great people all in alignment and going down that direction. A lot of entrepreneurs and professionals, there's so many different directions and tasks to be done or plates to be balanced, right, simultaneously. And unfortunately, when you're scattered, you don't get very far. But when you're in alignment, and you've got that force behind you doing the activities that are going to make and move the needle in a big way in a consistent nature, that's when things really start to take off. You go way further together than you go by yourself. I think that's kind of that old adage into that standpoint. I love that your husband jumped on board to that, because I mean, that's a dynamic in and of itself. And I talk to entrepreneurs all day long, and some of them, they love working with their spouse. They're their best friend. It's just such a great like dynamic. And others, it's like, I tried it, never do that again. So it's not for everybody. But I will tell you, Dani, and you're living proof of this. Some of the best and brightest minds, when they're able to partner together with their significant other, some of the most dynamic teams that are out there, some of the most incredible organizations that are out there. So it's really cool to see. It can be done, but it's not for everybody. You just got to kind of figure that out. But
Well,
I love it.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I did share, especially after we got in business together, is that we definitely had to be married for some time before we got into business together.
Mhm.
So fortunately for us, we got married very young.
Yep.
So we already went through some of those hurdles that you usually go through in the first 5, 6 years of marriage.
Sure.
We also got to go through parenting together. And so we got to go through just normal maturing and life experiences.
Mhm.
And I will definitely tell you, I feel like we've tried to fire each other every single year since we've joined each other in business.
It's
Um, it's not until we really started to focus on uh, us as
mm,
people, right? Who we are,
mm,
who do we want to be as husband and wife and mother and father and leader. And so when I was sharing that, like I'll tell a lot of people, I was a really great agent.
mhm.
And then my husband joined me in business and he made me a business.
Wow.
So he turned me from being a great agent into a great business.
Mm.
I also changed brokerages at that time.
Okay.
That also happened. And I had to put myself again in alignment with people that I knew would support me in the vision
Okay.
of building a team
Mhm.
and building a structure and building a business. So I changed brokerages and had the right mentors in my world.
Mm.
But I think the part of where we had to make another, or probably one of our very first shifts as a real estate team was what was I doing to pour into my cup before I poured into others?
Okay.
And so that is, we built, a team, we built a brand, we did a lot of things in 2020.
Mhm.
And I was this number two agent, number two team of our brokerage of
Oh,
600 agents.
unreal.
And I felt so depleted,
Wow.
so empty.
Mm.
I was not showing up as my best self. I was not treating people like I should be treating people.
Mm.
Um, I basically didn't do the work to really own that leadership role,
Wow.
and I had to start over. So in
Mm.
2021, I mean, I was basically having team members leave,
Mhm.
quit, fire, like all of the things happened all at once.
Sure.
And I had to completely rebuild. We
Mm.
thought we built it. And
Right.
then we're like, oh crap, that didn't work. And so now we had to rebuild it. And it was like, oh, we have to rebuild us.
Mm.
It wasn't that the structure didn't work, but who was leading it.
Mhm.
And so, 2021 is where I basically I had to prioritize all of that self care
Mhm.
and mental health and leadership development.
Mhm.
That's when those things became a priority in my world. And that's what I feel like has brought me to where we are today.
Wow, Dani. And the self-awareness and humility that you have to kind of take a step back and say that, feel that, and make changes to that is huge. It shows your character right there, period. So the idea behind it is doing it to the standard that you're seeing and saying, how am I showing up? Not just as a professional, but as a person, and making sure that everyone is guilty by association in a positive, not in a negative. And that to me is a big thing. And that's a part of the evolution that we talked about earlier on. I mean, it's okay. I mean, the idea of the fact of making moves and adjustments and shifting, that's nature, that's natural, right? The only thing that's consistent in this time and in this world is change. Nothing ever stays the same. So looking at it from that standpoint, how do we position? How do we make it better, faster, stronger, smarter, smoother, whatever the case may be? And the fact that you did that and essentially tore down a structure that you built, and to all intents and purposes was good, to make
Mhm.
it better. And I think that that's inspiring for everybody out there. Like, no matter where you're at, you can really take a step back and say, where am I? What am I doing? Who am I doing this with? And is this the right path? Is this the right way to do it? And it's too late, right? Or no, I'm not going to go that way because I've wasted too much time. I mean, that's not the right message. What you're doing and what you've done is, which I absolutely love that. So I wanna take a step back just for a second because I always ask this question. It always intrigues me. If you're comfortable talking about it, the change in brokerage. So current situation right now, if you want to talk about it, because as real estate professionals, there are a plethora of options and there's opportunities and there's not a one size fits all, right? Baskin Robbins is, what is it, 31 flavors or however many flavors they got. So there's something for everybody. Why did you truly, at the pinnacle of the business and the industry, especially into the marketplace, make a shift and a change to where you are now? I really would like to know.
I love that you brought that up because I'm starting to see way too many real estate agents. This is obviously bringing it to right now.
Mhm.
I see a lot of agents who do feel like they might be like me, looking for that easy button. And they're like, if I change brokerages because they're promising me all of these things, it's going to fix my business.
Mhm.
But as I've been sharing through my own story, it's not all about who's around you or the tools that you have. It's you. Like we're like the Taylor Swift song right now. I'm the problem. It's me.
So great.
And so yes, who you surround yourself, and a lot of the times the brokerage being the roof over your head, right? So, the brokerage being a place where you're getting your information from, who's influencing you. Obviously, I am someone who's looking for efficiency, so tools, all of those things are super important to me. And the brokerage at that point, because so 5 years ago I changed brokerages, and then last year I changed brokerage.
Okay.
And at that time, the brokerage value that I was looking for was I did need a place that could provide me an office space.
Okay.
So having a physical place, and this was before 2020, right? Now we're all experts at working remotely.
For sure.
So with an office space, but also who were the people who were going to be mentoring me or close to me. So power in proximity.
Mm.
And so that is why I chose. Am I able to say brokerage names here?
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, cool. Okay, so that's what brought me to Keller Williams. I started at Keller Williams. I left Keller Williams again just for location purposes.
Mhm.
I went to Remax. I actually knew nothing about Remax. I literally chose it because it was the closest office to my house.
Mm.
Um, and I knew I couldn't work out of my house. I didn't feel disciplined for that. And then I went back to Keller Williams because I knew at that point I had built a brand. I needed a brokerage that would support me in my branding. So I was very visual as far as I needed a brokerage that would let me just put them in a tiny corner and I can have my big giant brand on a for sale sign. And they also supported the team model.
Mm.
So that is definitely one of the reasons why I chose Keller Williams.
Wow.
But to bring you to that position, since then, right, we're talking about that's 2019 to now,
Mhm.
we've had so many market shifts. We've
Yeah.
had so many, market shifts, inflation, just so many things changing in our culture
Mhm.
that where people get their information from. Like everyone gets their information from TikTok, it seems like.
Yes.
Um, so I knew even in this last year, I was about to go through another big change in my world where I knew um, the place I was at, just like how I told you, where I was on a team and I went individual, I
Mhm.
knew it wasn't a win-win anymore.
Wow.
And so it's nothing against the company or the brand itself. It was more of I don't feel like I was even contributing to their culture.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't gaining anything from it.
Mhm.
And I knew um, I was starting to seek, and this is when I was obsessed. Basically, 2.5, 3 years ago, I have become obsessed with listening to podcasts.
Wow.
I have been obsessed with watching things on YouTube. I have been basically just going to every real estate conference I could find because I
Mhm.
always took such big knowledge nuggets and I needed to search for it outside of the brokerage. Like it needed to come away from, I wouldn't say the Kool-Aid, but it felt a little bit like Kool-Aid,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yeah.
like, this is our way and this is all we teach. Well, I was like, but there has to be another way.
Mhm.
And so that really led me to this current move. So we moved from Keller Williams. So we took our real estate team. We had about eight, 9 members on our team.
Uh-huh.
We had one of the largest office spaces in Keller Williams. We were definitely one of the teams that people walked by the office knew who we were.
Mhm.
And I made a bold move last summer
Mhm.
that I was like, we got to change. And who I saw that I followed in everything, like podcasts, books I'm reading, conferences I was at, all the people I listened to,
Mhm.
which was like Eric Hatch, Joe Herrera,
Mhm.
Spring Benson, just all of these titans, let's
Mhm.
say.
Yeah, sure.
Um, I was like, where do they work? Where do they hang their license?
Love it.
And realizing that they were at Real Broker. So
Mhm.
when I will tell you, again, I'm an impulsive personality. I know a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm also ADD, so a lot of us, you know, work the same.
Good.
I all I saw was, hey, this is where I want to be friends with these people. Like you want to choose those 5 people who are close to you and power and proximity that I knew I wanted to be around them. And if I can be under maybe that in that same organization,
Mhm.
uh, like Real Broker, and I can be at a brokerage that's nationwide. We're not Real Broker Texas, Real Broker California.
Mhm.
I wanted to be like we're the same family.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it was a very quick sell for me that
Wow.
I was like, all right, I want to be Real Broker. I can still brand how I want.
Uh-huh.
Um, the amazing amount of content and things that I'm learning from them. And then the fact that it was actually really easy for me to open an office space. That's where I'm at today. I have my own office.
Perfect.
And I could be in the same family and network with people across the country
Mm.
as easy as turning on my computer because I mean that's the world we live in.
For sure.
So and I want to learn how someone's doing big business in in Idaho. My one of my closest friends, she's the number 1 real agent, and she
Mm.
lives in a town of like no one knows of in Idaho.
So great. You know,
So
when you mentioned that though, Danny, it's so inspiring to hear kind of your mental journey going through the thought process of making the decision. The power and proximity note is huge. And I know that resonates with so many people out there, guilty by association, the top 5 people, as you mentioned. And this puts a local conversation to a national reach or international reach. I mean, it literally breaks down walls and barriers to learn and align and mastermind and grow with the best and brightest from every market. And I think that you were looking at this earlier on to your thought process of where am I finding the information? And it's not necessarily just inside my ecosystem, but where does it come from outside of the market, outside of that perspective, and bring it down and take it to application. And I love that. Big shout out to Eric, a past Titan on the show. So if you're watching Eric, big shout out to you, my friend. But you know, when you talk about real broker. I just think that's fantastic. And again, look, everybody has their spot, and there's pros and cons anywhere. I think ultimately you just got to find your place and what makes sense for you in that time and in that alignment. And I love that you were looking at it from a reciprocal nature. What were you giving to the brokerage versus what were you receiving? And when you're not feeling that, you got to make the right decision one way or the other. So I find that to be fantastic, Dani, and I definitely just wanted to get your thoughts on that. So with the furthering down the line, and obviously you growing and excelling your team to where you are to today, this is one of the favorite questions that everybody tunes in for, because now we laid the foundation of who is Dani, and the structure and the breakdown all the way through and through, and all the amazing things that you've done and continue to do. If you could look back at your career thus far and pick or choose, one or two things that you added or applied that you really felt movement in the needle, really just acceleration into what you are doing. And you've laid a lot of great nuggets already of just awesome wisdom. So you can tail into any of those. It can be new information, wherever your mind goes. What advice would you give to the audience here tuning in today?
Yeah, I think prioritizing where you're getting your information from, making sure it aligns with you and who you are as a person, and where you actually vision yourself going. I think that maybe not enough, and I don't know if it's because when I got my real estate license, I didn't think I was actually building a business. I didn't take a lot of ownership in the business side. I just kind of felt like, oh, I just have to sell people on who Dani is. And I'm like, well, that's easy. Here, me and my big ego. Um, then obviously got humbled many, many times in my career to learning that no, this is a business. We are helping people buy and sell homes, and one of the largest transactions that someone will experience in their life. And we also have the ability to make great money in this business as well. So someone who has a GED, no college degree, can actually be the breadwinner and have a lot of nice things. Because guys, I'm bougie. I will say I am bougie.
I love it.
I think that I didn't really prioritize all of that self work and all of that visioning of where I want, that visionary side of things, of envisioning where do I want to go, who do I want to be, who do I want to do that with.
Wow.
And truly building out those standards and it's not just business, it's life, but it has to also be in your business.
Yeah.
And I am learning so much by the people I surround myself with, and realizing what am I gaining from these relationships, and what am I gaining and how can I contribute? Because it's one thing to just be like, okay, I can surround myself with Eric. I can hang out with Eric Hatch and he can just teach me all the things.
Sure.
But what creates relationship is really feeling like it is a give and take, that I can contribute to these relationships. So that was definitely something that pulled me as a side note, with a brokerage, right? I want to feel like I can contribute. I want to feel like I can give back. How can I help the younger me, right? Like someone else who might be starting where I was 3 years ago, maybe avoid some of the things I went through.
Yeah.
And which is obviously what brings me to these podcasts, because I've learned so much on podcasts that I was like, you know what, if I can tell my story and it can help someone else out there who feels like they might be where I was a couple of years ago. So yeah, just taking that importance to all of that self-work, to having that, knowing who you are, knowing what your core values are, and then also understanding why you're doing it, right? Simon Sinek, if a lot of people obviously listen to Simon Sinek, he always talks about your why.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the consistent lesson I get, especially as I actually experience a completely rebuild again with my real estate team, that I got to know where we're going, take ownership in being the leader of this company and this brand and this organization, and knowing that I'm making sure that the people who are coming with us are going to be aligned with that as well. Wow. And so that can apply to so many things. It definitely applies to who you choose as a broker.
Okay.
It definitely applies to who, if you are an agent looking for a real estate team, that you can't just go to a real estate team because they say they have leads. You need to make sure that you're going on a team because you believe in the leader and where they're going and who they are. And so I think that don't just go somewhere because someone says, "Hey, I have something pretty,
Right.
and here's a shiny penny."
Mm.
It's not the splits game.
Mhm.
I looked at cheaper brokerages, and it wasn't the fix it button.
Yeah.
So it is, I think that to me, having mentors and having people in your world who are positive influences is definitely the priority that I wish I would have placed a little bit more um, into my world 5 years ago when I was building this team.
Wow. But I think that, in my opinion, is not emphasized enough. People hear it time and time again. I need a mentor. I need guidance. I need somebody who's been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, then to learn from certain mistakes. I mean, you're going to stumble and step along the way. Failures are part of the process, like assess. But ultimately, I think that in and of itself is massive advice. It doesn't matter where you are in your career path. Like, think about who's around you. But for you, Dani, which I think is phenomenal, is you practice what you preach. And again, you breaking the team down to the core and then building it back up again to where you are to today, and really looking at it from a perspective of alignment, proximity, and having that ultimate balance to continue to grow and evolve, I think is huge inspiration. And again, this is one of those things where I love the fact that if you're like, hey, if I did it, you can do it. And that to me is extremely meaningful because look, as life is tough, business is tough, real estate is tough. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. I think there's a lot of instances where people can use that analogy of pick your tough or pick your hard, right? I mean, life is hard, it's tough. So what are you going to choose? What's your choices that you're going to make in development that way? Because it is work if you want the, results. So to me, I love the direction that you're going. Where does it go from here, Dani? Where does the team go? Where do you envision this? Um, and then any other piece of advice to kind of wrap that up, if there's any.
Perfect. So I will leave you guys with that. When I started to get this sense of needing to change where I was or change who I was being influenced by or prioritizing self care, and then also creating a vision for the company and a target, and knowing where we're going. By going to all of these real estate conferences and going to all of these places, you guys, I went and hired every coach out there. like, like if they had a coaching program, I signed up for it.
Oh,
And so let's just say I might have been a little overcoached this last 2 years.
hey.
But I knew I was like, I have to have skin in the game, right?
Mhm.
Like there has to be some higher level of accountability because I'm either going to have self-inflicted pain regardless of life,
Yeah.
or I'm going to actually, like you said, choose your heart, choose that pain. And
Yep.
so I knew there was something that I could be doing that could actually bring my business, because I noticed how my business constantly stayed the same.
Mm,
And it wasn't like I was evolving, but my business wasn't evolving.
got it.
And so that to me is kind of what really took over the last 2 years of my life. I've been trying to find a business model
Mm,
to match who I was and how I was evolving.
mhm.
And to be the complete truth is that it took this year, 2024. I'm in a mastermind group, and I have had two masterminds that really opened our eyes to notice that how I've been building this business
Mhm.
wasn't aligned with who I am and where I am currently.
Mhm.
And so, where Dani Hampton Group, DHG, is today
Yeah.
is, yes, we're rebuilding again. And we thought the goal was to build a big team. I've seen a lot of mega teams out there.
Sure.
I thought I had a brand that could support a mega team. I had systems and processes that could support a mega team. But what I learned over the last 2 years is that I don't think I'm necessarily where uh, building a mega team was going to be aligned with where I want to be,
Mm.
because it wasn't matching how I wanted to be involved in with my clients. If I'm a leader of a mega team, I was starting to feel farther and farther apart from all of the extra things that I do to service my clients and give them that experience, and really just go back into that client care side, that we actually care, because this is the most stressful thing you can go through.
Mm.
So I realized, I was like, I gotta be in production. I'm not over here. I've been thinking I needed to get myself out of production. And I'm like, no, I actually need to be involved.
Mhm.
There is a way to leverage my team in a way that puts me more involved with my clients and less involved in the nitty gritty, I dotting, T's crossing, you know, let's say back of house work, right?
Sure.
But there's people who love it, right? I meet people all the day long. They don't want to be me. They don't want to be the person who goes on the appointments.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I actually like
Hmm.
that. So I just realized I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I was over here trying to lead a team and trying to create more and more agents to try to get them up into production like I've seen in my own career, but I wasn't focused on my own production and who I was to service my clients. And so yeah, we I think once I started to notice that we weren't building it right,
Mm.
it just took a few lessons for us to learn to be like, you know what, we've done this before, but I'm sure as hell not going to take 3 years to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out here right now. Let's readjust what we're doing. We're pivoting just like the market. We can pivot,
Mhm.
and let's get back to who we are as a core, what started DHG, and I I have a very big goal. I'm going to 10 times. I'm going to see how many houses I can sell, and how I can leverage people who do amazing things, but again, don't want to be the salesperson,
Yeah.
and do it at a very high level. So that's where we're going.
Oh, Danny, I love that. And again, it's just further inspiration and direction for anybody out there, even 11 years in, always evaluating and positioning what is going to be best and making sure that it's better than the last, kind of moving forward and not staying stagnant. And sometimes it takes others longer to do that, right? And that's okay. It's better late than never sort of scenario, but having the self-aware nature and the characteristics to actually do something about it. It's one thing to learn and really soak in knowledge. It's a whole nother thing to apply it. And that applied knowledge is really where success can formulate done the right way. And you're doing that. And you're constantly growing from that, which is great. And that's the example that we're looking for as Titans are concerned, is to say, hey, you guys are on here for a reason. And it's just so inspiring to really hear the story and the journey and the thought process that way. I know that there's so many different perspectives into a right or wrong way to do it. And look, your business is your business. And ultimately, you're living the life by design that you look for. And so many people will argue, well, size and quantity, or it's quality over quantity, or it's transaction volume per agent that really matters. So what do you, I mean, there's so many different ways to cut it up. I think ultimately you got to live with the decisions and be happy and proud of what you're creating for your family, for your community, and ultimately, into my opinion, the legacy that you're leaving. Because you mentioned it earlier, the time sort of scenario and
Mhm.
not having enough of it. Well, that's the number one commodity. So how are we really learning from that and sharing it to the world? This is great, Danny. I mean, you and I could chat for a lot longer than this episode. You're just a wealth of knowledge into it. Diving into all the information that you've given. I want to encourage the audience this way, Danny. I want to say, what's the best way, anybody listening to this, or if they're watching it, how would you want them connect with you? I mean, ultimately, if they love what they heard and what they saw, and like, how can I align with Danny? How do I reach out? How do I learn? How do I grow from this person? What's the best way?
Awesome. So Instagram, absolutely, because if you guys didn't know, Facebook limits your friends.
Yes, come on, Facebook.
We're shaming Facebook right now. So Instagram, please, follow me. I tend to try to follow everyone back that follows me, which is at the Dani Hampton. So hopefully from the show notes, you'll know how to spell my name. There's no periods, there's no underscores. It's just the Dani Hampton. And you guys, I'm there. I'm talking on stories. I'm sharing reels. I'm making posts. I'm being vulnerable. I'm being very transparent. I'm trying not to just show you guys the highlight reels. I'm really trying to show you guys the behind the scenes, what I'm going through. And this isn't just for real estate. This is for who I am, mothering two girls that are 9 and 5. So, going through my own challenges of just knowing how to be a leader for them. And then working with my spouse and just trying to navigate the everyday life and building a big business and seeing how far we can reach.
Dani, I love this. Everybody, please follow Dani on Instagram. You're going to learn and grow from this. And again, reach out. If you got any questions, Dani's there. Don't flood the DMs, right? She'll do what she can. She's busy. But at the end of the day, Dani, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, sharing your story, who you are, and what brought you to today. I can't wait for another one. I think we left so much information out of this. We didn't go digital. We didn't go nerdy. We didn't talk about content in there. I think there's maybe an episode 2.0 out there, everybody. So, but Dani, thanks again. Honor and a pleasure. Can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you. As always, your time and attention, your love and support here at the Real Estate Titans. Don't forget to like, subscribe. You know what to do at this point. I do have to give our sponsor a quick shout out, Lion Bolt Media. If you are a real estate professional looking to grow and scale your business with leading edge digital marketing, visit lionboltmedia.com for more information. Now, we're live here on Real Estate Titans every Tuesday afternoon, a different Titan, a different location. Catch everybody in the next live episode of Real Estate Titans. Take care. Thanks, Dani.